Welcome to Attitude of Altitude podcast presented by Planet of One. This podcast is designed to inspire change in people to become the best versions of themselves and live their best lives. We share stories of struggle and success to encourage and empower listeners to be bold, take action, and be the change we desire to see in this world. We are all part of this planet. We are all a planet of one. Know that your attitude determines your altitude in life. Welcome to the podcast. Hello and welcome to Attitude of Altitude. I am so thrilled to have our guest with us today. Let me tell you a little bit about who we have with us today. In 1979, Helice Sparky Bridges was a millionaire, married to an abusive man, decided to commit suicide when she heard an angelic voice who told her she could not take her life because she was going to sing, dance, write, and star in a musical on Broadway in New York City, telling the true story of how she brought love to the world. Today, over 50 million people have been impacted by her Who I Am Makes a Difference. Blue Ribbon, Saving Lives, Ending Conflict, and Making Dreams Come True. She is a TEDx presenter, has spoken on stages following the Dalai Lama, Vice President Al Gore, and other global leaders. Self-esteem expert and best-selling author Jack Canfield, has called her a cross between Gandhi, Lucille Ball, and Martin Luther King. Please help me welcome Sparky. Hi, Sparky.
Hey,
How are you?
I am awesome. Thank you. I'm thrilled that we're going to attitude and bring people together.
I love it. I'm so grateful for you being here. I know your schedule is always packed, but I wanted people to really get to know the woman that started this movement, where she was, and all the things that you actually went through to become the person that's launching this mission of impacting billions of people. So please take us through your journey.
So first, I really want to say that whoever's listening to this, know that one person can make a difference. And out of the pain or the darkness of whatever's going through, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and just keep going for it. And I just want to encourage us to do that, because I'm 78 years young now, and in 1979, my husband and I, we owned a gorgeous home overlooking the Pacific Ocean. We were both very successful in business. He was revered in our community, beloved businessman, genius at making money, very generous to everybody. And behind closed doors, he was a very controlling and intimidating and verbally abusive to me. I withdrew. I was invisible, and I was mom of two preteen sons. Our kids, what do you call it? Surf the waves right below our home in the ocean. I mean, on the outside it looks gorgeous. Yes, I'm driving a fancy car and the whole 9 yards. I couldn't buy a dress without his approval. Mm-hmm. We built a big house, and I wasn't allowed to paint a wall or choose a curtain, or I had no say. But nobody would know that, because on the outside I was manager of the top producing real estate office in the United States for the company I worked for. I bought 60 homes with no money down in 6 months, because we had no money initially. I managed them, I painted them, I rented them, until I was a ballistic mess. But I did it because my husband was a genius at saying we could do this. And I went off and did it. I was in sales. He was in corporate sales, and I was in residential. So that's where it was. Okay. Now here's the breakout news, because after you're bullied, we were married 18 years. We knew each other for 3 years before, and And just slowly, 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 we may not notice it, but our self-worth kind of goes to, it plummets. And we looking really good on the outside. I'm I'm a gorgeous young woman. And I wish I knew it then, but for all of us that think, later on we go if we only knew. But one day I was driving home, I pulled into the driveway, and everything went black. It just went dark inside me. I didn't even know what I called Sparky. Grandma Sparky is what people call me today. That light, that spark, that ignition inside of our souls or our spirit or our hearts, I didn't even know I had one. It went out, just kind of blew out. And all I saw was, that's it. I got to kill myself. I don't know who I am, and I can't matter and make a difference in it. I don't care if we're a mother and we're successful and we've got money and we've got all that stuff. If there's no soul left, if you're damaged that bad, if you've been bullied, you've been harmed like that. And I just went dark, and I plotted how I was going to take my life. I thought about it a lot, and I thought, okay, this is not dramatic, but it was for, when you think about it later, it is. But I was going to drive my brand new Mercedes off the cliff into the ocean and die that way, because we were right there. And I was going to just speed it off. I couldn't figure, I wanted to make sure I killed myself, because I didn't want to be all battered up and then I was the one getting hurt, because, that's has happened to me over the years. I hurt myself, like, I wouldn't eat, or I wouldn't do things for myself to damage myself. And so I said, I'm out of here. And the day that I was going to commit suicide, I fell to my knees and I just screamed to the heavens. And I said, stop the world. I got to get off and find a place where people love each other. And in that moment, I heard a voice come through me, an angelic voice. I never heard such a thing. And it was clear as you and I are speaking. And I heard it say, you can't take your voice, because you're going to sing, dance, write, and have a musical on Broadway in New York. And you're going to bring love to the world. And that was the beginning.
Sparky, what do you believe made the biggest difference for you to listen to that voice?
I don't think there is a choice about that voice. The voice was like me talking to me from some other, I don't know what it was. It was like being surrounded by 100 million angels inside of me. It was like being around all the great people I hang around with now, because I'm a leader of leaders. It's like when you get a cheerleading like that, I didn't know what it was, but it wasn't something that I had to think about. It just was. And I popped up like toast in that moment. And I went, I'm going to sing and dance and write. And I went, but I don't know how to sing and dance and write. I'm starving for love. I don't know how to bring love to the world. But would you like to know what I did next?
Would love to.
Okay. So here's the deal. I had a client who was on Broadway in New York. She was a real estate client of mine, and I call her up. And I say, okay, so what do? I want to sing and dance and write. So she doesn't ask me if I could sing or dance. She just knows me. I sold her real estate, right? She said, go downtown to Stage 7, downtown San Diego, and audition. And I went, oh, okay. So I go down there. I drive down there, like in a couple of days, and I sign up for singing and dancing. I don't know. I am one of 37. What I don't know is that everybody that's auditioning are 17 to 23-year-old professionals from Las Vegas and Broadway stages. They were all that, and so each of us had to get up one at a time and sing these 4 lines. Piano man pianos, that singer sings, and I was 37. There were only 37 in the room, and everybody gets applauded like crazy. Oh my gosh! And then it came my turn. So I have the music. I can't read music. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm excited. I took the risk. I say take a risk. If you don't know how to do something, take a risk. I got up there all puffed up, buttons popping off of my blouse, and I started singing, starting here, starting now. And the director, he flies up to the front of the room. He says, make the beat go up. That woman's dying up here. And so it gives me the right to sing all 4 lines, which was just as horrible. But I don't know I'm horrible. And everybody just stares at me, and not a applaud happened. They're just like, what is she doing here? That goofy look, that like, huh? And but I'm just staring at them. I'm smiling. I'm all excited. And I don't stop smiling. And finally, you hear a couple applause and a couple more applause. Pretty soon, everybody's applauding because I'm just standing there smiling. And I landed the role.
Wow.
I landed the role because it was a musical comedy, and they thought I was a comedian. Nobody would have gone down to stage 7. These were all professionals. And she was a professional. She said, go down there.
That's great. So standing in your own shoes and just being confident in who you are at that moment and not worrying about anyone else landed you that role.
Yeah, and I'll say it from a different way than you just described it, but I agree with you. I'll say that when we're out of our mind, something occurs and God comes through, because that was God. And that's one of the things that I can count on myself for, is being present for that, because there's something bigger than all of us that when we're open for it. Look, I don't know from being open for it. Honest to goodness, I don't sit there and go in those days going, okay, God, do it for me. I didn't know. I just screamed to the heavens and I got a voice. And then I just followed it and asked for help. And I spent 3 months rehearsing every day with this team. I got to sing. I got to learn how to sing. I got to learn how to perform. I loved being around young people. I was the mom. They were kids. They needed a mom to talk to. I could give them advice. I was a businesswoman. I knew as a mom. And I felt I had somebody needed me. My kids, they were self-sufficient. They went out and with their friends, and they went on their bikes or surfing or whatever. Hi mom, goodbye. But and I found my soul with them. I found something that was called community. And I had not, I'm in a profession that's competitive, real estate, and I'm a leader in that, but I never, since I was in school and sports, I had not been together where we were all doing something collaboratively and helping each other to do a perform. We only did a one-night performance. I did not know this. I did not know they were professionals, by the way, until the night of the one-night performance, where I had 3 parts in the musical and I was in the opening ceremony, and I'm about to walk out on the stage. I hear the overture. And the night before, we practiced on some major big stage in San Diego, with balconies and everything. And now we're in a small stage. About 100 people are watching us. And I turned to the young man standing next to me, Jeff, and he was like 6'2", and I'm 5 feet. I said, Jeff, wasn't it awesome being on the stage last night at the Symphony Towers when we were rehearsing? And he goes, no, he said, you've been on Las Vegas major stages. And I went, no, it's my first. And I never finished saying time when the song started, and we walked out going, starting here, starting now, when we walk, we'll walk together. I was in the show. And which gave me the confidence to go back home and pack my bags and walk out of my $1 million house with a potted plant in my clothes and leave my husband. I did not, he had all my money. I always turned it over to him. So I walked out with nothing.
Wow. Helice, how did you go from that? Because there's a lot of people in those situations. Maybe they're not walking out of a abusive marriage, but they're in a situation where they feel like they have nothing.
Yes.
And they want to move forward. So how did you go from that to beginning to build this movement?
Yeah, what happened for me is I was broken. I was a mess, emotionally a mess. Of course, my kids couldn't understand what was going on. I walked out. Without money, I reached out to my friends who allowed me to stay at their home for a short period of time because, I was like, who would want somebody around me that's just messed up? But they did for a bit, and I went from home to home. I what you call it, when people go away from their houses, I was there to take care of their house or their dog. I lived in my car for a bit. I went homeless for just about a couple months. But I popped in. I probably moved 22 different places that summer. And then I got a aha. And and by the way, I was very successful in real estate, and I put that on the back burner. And all of a sudden, what happened is I decided I'd go down and see if I could take a loan from the bank. This, by the way, this was the women's movement had just signed into law that I could get a loan on my own name back in 1979. It just passed.
Incredible.
And I didn't know this, and I went and I got a $5,000 loan to pay back in 3 months. And I went back to work, and every 3 months I paid the $5,000 back and borrow it back again, and do that until I could get a place of my own. And but I, 3 months, saved the money, paid it back. That was the next step of that.
Brilliant. Really. Even though you're going through it, but you developed your own system of keeping you moving forward.
Yeah, I have been this way, so I just want to acknowledge that one of the things that's true about me is whether I was in school, I was a cheerleader in school. I was always I was voted peppiest in my school Hall of Fame. I had that kind of natural way to just see something and want to get it done. If there was a musical in the school, I played the Lucille Ball part. I was just funny, and I was who I was, but I didn't think much about it. Like we don't know who we really are. You just slide into something. But here's what I want to express is if you're not moving forward, you can't find out what's happening. If you're stuck, it's like if you have a wheelbarrow with a lot of rocks in it and you can't lift it initially, but if you lift it and you can roll it around and move it, if it's not, you're stuck. And I just had to keep going because that's my nature. I did find a beautiful place on the ocean. I gave up my real estate career. I started to listen, and I went to a church with my friend. She wanted me to go to a church of religious science. I said, I'm Jewish, I don't go to church. She goes, you'll go here, you'll like it. I go, I don't know what this is about. She said, we got to get you out of your place because you're just suffering, And I was lonely. My kids are with their dad. They think mom's a wacko now, It's like I left and they don't know what happened, and I can't explain it. I went to the church, and they had about 4,000 people in the church, and she's singing, the Reverend Terry Cole Whitaker is singing, you gotta accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative. And I'm thinking, God, I grew up with that song with my mom. I like this church. I'm going to give you a short story of what happened next, okay? Because what happened is something about that, and I met a gentleman who was in the S training in those days. For those that have been in personal development or Landmark or any of PSI or all of those personal development courses that are still going on, he dragged me there, and I heard Warner Earhart, who created S, talk about. I listened to 14 hours of him talking in front of 22,000 people, and he's talking about we have to make a difference in the world. Mm-hmm. And in all kinds of ways he was speaking, and something lit me up, and I decided that I was going to find a way to make a difference, and I became co-chair of the San Diego Hunger Project. Mm. I heard that 21 kids were stuck dying every minute for lack of food, and I figured I was a millionaire. I could help, but I don't know how. And I created a button that said, "Who I am makes a difference," my Hunger Project game. And I bought, by the way, my mother had a dream I was broke, just so you know. She's in Florida. I'm in California. She sends me $1,800 because my mother, when my dad passed, my mother had a widower, a man that came in and messed her up and took all her money, all the savings. He ripped her off. She was a very smart woman, but under those, and so my brother and I pitched in and helped her. And she sent me a check and said, I had a dream that you were broke. I never told her I left my husband. I never told her I gave up my career. She just sent me money, and I bought 1,000 buttons that said "Who I am makes a difference" and paid my rent that month.
Beautiful. The intuition of the mom, and then you moving forward with what you felt in your heart that is going to make a difference. What did you do with those 1,000 buttons? How did you?
Okay, so what was so amazing is I became co-chair of the San Diego Hunger Project, and I went and I started to, wherever I went, I decided, oh, that person's making a difference. I think I'll go tell them. And a woman was pulling the weed out of her yard, and I thought, she's making her yard look nice. I pull up, I get out of the car, I run up to her. She's in her sweats, in a sweatshirt and something. And without asking permission, I just popped that button with a pin. You have to hook on it. And I said, "You matter, make a difference." And I gave it to her, and I said, "Thank you for making your yard look nice." And I would drive off, and I would just do stuff like that, And my kids, when they saw me, they'd slide down in the car and they go, "Oh, there she goes again." Somebody's smiling on the street holding their kid's hand. I would pull the car over and go, "Gotta give them a button. They're making a difference. They're smiling." And I would just do that. And people started to buy the buttons. And I raised $1,000 a month for the Hunger Project. I never kept any of the money for myself. I just did that. And then I wound up going to Israel for a year and a half. After I was 8 months for the co-chair of the San Diego Hunger Project, we enrolled 10,000 people to do something to end world hunger. All 1,000 buttons were sold. I didn't even say to sell them. People just started giving me money. I didn't ask. And out of that time, the church, they were making a tour to Israel and Egypt. And I said, "Oh, I'll be on that trip." And I turned to my friend, I said, "Who said that?" That was the angels still talking to me. And I wound up going to Israel for a year and a half.
What was that journey like for you?
It changed my entire life. I live in a confined, beautiful area in Del Mar, California, where it's beach town. You walk with your shorts, you go to the beach, there's beautiful homes, restaurants, everything. I'm in Israel. I go there on a tour, Israel and Egypt, and I have a big spiritual happening while I'm there. Before I leave, I'm down in Mexico. there was a disaster, a dam disaster that wiped out 5,000 families. And as a chair of the Hunger Project, we went down and delivered food every day. And one of those days, I was packed to go to Israel and Egypt on a tour. And I come to the terminal, and I look up and I say, "Why am I going to Israel and Egypt?" I hear a voice said, "You'll find out who you are." I said, "How will I find out?" I heard a voice said, "You'll have a sign." I said, "How will I know?" And they'll say, "Listen." And I go, "Thank you for sharing." And I get in the plane and I went there. While I was there, when epiphany that happened, we're in the place where we're walking with Christ, carried the cross, and I mean, it's emotional. Everybody's crying, and we're going from city to city and so forth, and we're sitting out where Christ gave out the fishes and the loaves, but we're 50 people. Sam, a tour guide, is talking to us about where we are. I hear nothing because the breakfast was at in the morning. Sam comes over to me and says, "I know you like an open book. You're a person that doesn't like money. You give selfless service. I can see you living in a kibbutz in Israel." And that's a communal lifestyle for people that don't know. And I said, "You got to be out of your mind." I said, "I live in Del Mar. I have my teenage kids. I just sold a Mercedes there. I live a good life. I'm not going to work in the fields. I'm not going to live in Israel." And he said that in the morning. Here he's talking, and all I heard, I was like a bubble. There was no sound. I heard the crashing of cymbals in my head, kibbutz, kibbutz, kibbutz. And I went, I couldn't hear anything. And I turned to the man next to me, Mel, who was on the trip with us. And I said, "Mel, where are we?" And he just mouthed. He just went, and I couldn't hear him. And I took off and ran to the side of the mountain, and I yelled, No, it can't be living in a kibbutz." And the voice that came through said, "Yes, and Sam, the tour guide, was sent to tell you." Wow. I came back home. That's when I gave away my Mercedes, my clothes, my jewelry, and everything. And I took a one-way trip to Israel, where I remained there for a year and a half, 6 months in the kibbutz. I worked in the fields, 110 degrees. I climbed grapefruit trees. I washed, cleaned roads. I planted baby banana trees. I washed a lot of dishes. I worked in the laundry room. I did all the menial work that there was to be done. And then and after 6 months, they let you stay for 6 months. I went on to live in Haifa for the next year, where I opened and closed an Arab-Israeli conference.
That is incredible for you to go through that journey and then to end up in Haifa actually doing something with peace. What was the mindset that was going through you to get you to that?
Okay, so when I left the kibbutz, I wound up meeting people as I was trying to find where I would live and so forth. And what happened is I was taking these personal development courses, and while I was there, I couldn't speak Hebrew, but in my courses I would invite everybody. I would walk down the street and try to practice my shalom, and what, "I'm going to have a party at my house," is all I knew how to say. "And why don't you come?" And so 50 people show up at this little place that I got, and it turns out that they were like the who's who of Israel. People would say, "How'd you get the head of the best singing group in all of Israel?" And I go, "I don't know. I met him on the bus bench." I don't know. I just said, "Shalom, come to my house." And that's how it happened. I was there. And then in the process, I was invited to, a gentleman was there. He was a professor at Haifa University, and he said, "Come to my class." And I came to the class, and he was speaking to American students, exchange students. And while I was there, we went for coffee after, the professor and I, and he said, I want you to come to this conference, this Arab-Israeli conference for educators, and why don't you just join us? And I said, well, okay. And I came, and the first night, when it was over, they brought people together to say what worked and what didn't work. Well, since it was in Rachi Drip, it was in the solid Hebrew, I didn't understand a word they were saying, but I could feel the energy. I knew when people were, this worked and what it didn't. So I conveyed that. And I said to the group, I said, this is what I thought worked and this is what I thought didn't work. And all of a sudden they said, okay, tomorrow you'll open and close this the next 2 days. And I went, okay.
That's fantastic, because you actually were fully present.
I was just sitting there in the seat. Yes. We would call it fully present. I would call it, I just happened to sit down in the seat and I felt what worked and what didn't work. And then I went out with the program director after each thing, and we walked into the woods there, and I would just say that, here's what I thought worked and here's what I thought didn't work. He walked outside, I ran after him, and I told him, so during the day I just would say that. Mm-hmm.
You went with your intuition and you followed through.
I did.
How did you go from that to then beginning the Blue Ribbon Movement?
Yes. So I was in Israel for a year and a half, and I wound up coming back. When I came back home, people stopped me everywhere I went, and they would say, you're the lady with the button. You gave me a button. And I'd say, the button? It's a year and a half. And the first story of the button was this lady, she came over. I was having lunch with a friend at a restaurant, and she said, you gave me that button. I put the button in my medicine cabinet. I'm a school teacher. Every night I come home, I'm cooking dinner, I'm grading papers. My kids come home, they drop the books on the floor and they yell, when's dinner going to be ready? My husband comes in, he opens the refrigerator, takes out a beer, pops a beer, goes and watches the sports, and he yells, when's dinner going to be ready? I get a headache. She said, I walk in from the kitchen, through the living room, into the bedroom, into the bathroom. I open my medicine cabinet where I put my button, and I looked at my button, and I said, Mabel, who you are makes a difference. And she said, and I haven't taken medicine in a year and a half because of that button, of you telling me that. And I went, her name was Mabel. And I was struck by it. I was struck by the stories that people would stop me on the street. And I'll just tell you one more, and that was a young man. I was downtown in San Diego walking, and by a big building, and I hear a banging on the window of the first floor. And I turn, and there's somebody waving me in. This young man, junior executive. I come in. He says, he opens the drawer and takes out the button. He said, do you remember giving me this button when I was roller skating with my son in Balboa Park? And I said, yeah, I do remember. He said, I was falling all the time. My son, I was roller skating and I couldn't, and I kept falling. But you came over and told me I was a great father. And I was smiling with my son, and you gave me this button. And I said, yeah. He said, that day, I had saved my company $250,000, and nobody said thank you. So every day I open my drawer and I look at the button and I say, above all, I'm a great father. We can't know the difference we make in a minute or less. And the button stories I started to tell, which created a woman coming to my home and gifting me a small box, beautifully gifted, with a roll of ribbons that said, who I am makes a difference. They were red and white at the time. They're now blue and gold. You can see it behind me. And she said, do with it what you want. I had a dream last night that the contents of this box would be all over the world. And she left.
Wow.
And I opened it up and started to cut the ribbons. There were 120 ribbons on a roll, and I cut them and put straight pins in them. And I go, is this what I'm going to do? I went out and started honoring people like I had done before. Caught on. Yeah. And then I'll just say that In the process of doing, a lot of people started to pay attention. I still had no money, but I had a boyfriend in Israel, Armand, a French man. We were in a relationship for over a year, and he flew into San Diego to ask me to marry him, and I chose not to because there was something that was coming through me that I had to do, and it was the blue ribbon. And at the airport, when he was about to leave, we were having coffee, and he hands me a roll of money with a blue ribbon, like you get in the store, just simple little ribbon. And he says, "I think you need money for ribbons. I don't know what you do, but," and I said, "Oh, Armand," I was just weeping because here he was giving me something, and he left, and my nose is to the glass. In those days, you had to walk out, you could see somebody getting into the airplane, and I'm screaming, "I'm so sorry, Armand." I went and with $600 and $20 bills in 1982. I went to the bank to the bank, yes, and I started my nonprofit with that $600. And I
And
said, "Yeah, go ahead."
how do you believe those ribbons impact people? Share some of those stories.
Yes. So I brought a team together, about 12 kids and adults and grandparents and business people, and I gave them ribbons. And I said, "Go out and honor people." I gave them a little packet of 10 ribbons, and I said, "Come back and say what happened." They would go out and honor people. And a week later, they came back. Many of the stories are now in Chicken Soup for the Soul, made into television movies. Um, but one of the stories that is a very famous story in this Chicken Soup for the Soul book, and Chicken Soup for the Soul of America. It's been made, and this is the book in Chinese. This is my book here. These are the stories that we captured. And I'll tell you one of the stories, a very famous story, and it's on our homepage. This story was #1 on YouTube in the nonprofit category for 10 weeks. It's about a teacher got some of these ribbons. People started getting ribbons. 35,000 people were honored in the first 3 months. You could not stop this sucker.
Right.
Everybody wanted a ribbon. And people, we didn't even have a website. I don't even know how we did this. And anyhow, so I didn't even know. I think the first bag of ribbons was $10 or something. And the teacher in New York bought a bunch of ribbons, a high school teacher. She honored each of her students in the class and told them how much they mattered. She cheered them on for their dreams, which is the sound bing. That's the sound that makes dreams come true. And she gave them 3 extra ribbons and said, let's try a community building project. Go out, honor people, pay it forward, give them an extra ribbon to honor somebody else, and so forth. Come back and say what happened. And later that day, one of the high school students went to a junior executive and honored him for helping him with career planning. And honored him and said, "I have a blue ribbon for you, and it says who I am makes a difference. And may I honor you with this for helping me? May I place it above your heart? I'll take the spark from my heart and put it in there. Bing! It's a sound that makes dreams come true." And he gave him 2 extra ribbons and said, "We're doing a class project. Would you honor somebody and tell me what happens?" And later that day, the junior executive goes to his grouchy boss, and he honors him for being a creative genius and for giving him a job. With his permission, he places the ribbon over his heart and cheers him on. Gives him the last ribbon. Tells him the project this young man is doing in school. That night, the grouchy boss is driving home in New York traffic. And he goes, who am I going to honor? He comes and sits his 14-year-old boy down. And he says, "Every night I come home, I yell at you for not cleaning up your room, not getting better grades in school. But tonight, son, I want to just tell you that who you are makes a difference and that I love you." And he places the ribbon above the boy's heart. And the boy starts to sob and sob. He walks over to a drawer, opens a drawer, pulls out a gun, looks at his dad and says, "I was planning on committing suicide tomorrow, Dad, because I didn't think you loved me. And now I don't have to."
It's very powerful.
And the way I got that story was the teacher called me from New York. I didn't have a computer. I didn't have a nothing. I didn't know how to write it down. I was just overwhelmed. I didn't even write her name down. I didn't, it's not like today where you take a picture and you get a photo op and everybody. It was like, whoa. And she said, this is what she did. And I went, wow, I'll never stop telling that story for the rest of my life, because that was community. Me, I'm in California. This is a teacher in New York. She impacts 30 kids who, one of those kids, honors a junior executive who honors his spouse, who saves that boy's life in one day, in a minute or less. That was love. And of course, today, that story that went viral on YouTube is responsible for 50 million people being involved in our work, hearing that message. I was invited to speak on because of a ribbon. I'm a high school graduate. I was invited to follow Vice President Al Gore and the Dalai Lama on stage at the Environmental Earth Summit, because somebody honored somebody with a ribbon who said she's making a difference for kids. And all of a sudden I get on the main stage sitting, I'm there sitting next to Neil Armstrong, who landed on the moon. I mean, I'm with every global leader, and I got a ribbon, for goodness sake. So that was that part of the story.
Sparky, what do you think is the true power of these ribbons? What is the world crying for?
It's a really good question, because I didn't know initially for a really long time. I'll say this. What I found out is that we live in a punishment society. We point to what's not working. You're never enough. Your grades are never enough. Your money is never enough. You just are never enough, and we're in competitive, we're in complaint, we criticize. It's just, look, it's not anything wrong with anybody. Clearly, everybody matters. Systemically, like we're in Black Lives Matter right now. We're in, COVID, where we're isolated. We're angry. It's just like we're either popping like toast and making a difference in the world, which is maybe 1/10 of 1% of the planet, I'm guessing, that holds everything up, like Christ and Muhammad and our great spiritual leaders. But really, love, we can talk about it, but when you be it, when I go up to people and I honestly tell a kid that you matter, and that I love you, and that I see what you do, and you can go for your dreams, and give you a bing, and give you 2 extra ribbons and say, go honor others. That's something you have never seen in your life before. Because nobody does that without asking for money back or something back. It just comes purely. And that's what the divinity of it all is. Like I say, initially I had no clue. I would watch the changes happen with people, and I would come home, and my friends know this, I would come home and weigh this on a scale. I weighed the ribbon on a scale, and I go, how do you do that? I didn't understand what the angel told me, that I would teach love. I didn't know that this ribbon was love. By the way, it's blue. It's the sky. It's infinity. It's gold. It's the gold inside of us. It's on an angle. It's cut on an angle for forward motion. It has the I am affirmation in it. It says who I am makes a difference. It's a very powerful conversation. There is so much behind this ribbon, and there's probably 120. It's about giving and receiving. There's so many elements in when you honor somebody, you be, like Gandhi said, you must be the change you wish to see in the world, not do the change. This is present time. When you honor somebody, you go into an avenue with somebody and you are present. I just did a whole talk on World Unity Week last week, and I talked about be, do, have. And Ram Dass in 1971 wrote a book called Be Here Now. And all of us we had to do something in order to have something in order to be. That's the way the culture was. And he just turned it upside down. He said, no, instead of you needed to do something so you could have something, so you could be something, you need to be who you always wanted to be, so then you have something you always want to have, and then you could do what you wanted to do. And it was just like, I said it was like flip me upside down like a turtle on its back. I could not move, and all I did was look to the sky, and I went, what? I'm a doer. But this slowed me down.
Mm.
And because our work in the world for our nonprofit is uniting humanity through the power of love, now, by the way, we're writing the musical for Broadway in New York right now. It's called Bing, The Sound of 1 Billion Dreams.
Beautiful.
I want to honor that the title was given to us by LeGrand Green, who was former executive producer of The Oprah Show. It was at my home with about 14 people. I was talking about the musical a couple of years ago, and they all agreed to this. I said, but I don't know the title. And he looked and he said, well, it's Bing, The Sound of a Billion Dreams. And we all dropped the mic, and that was it. It was like, So
it's come around full circle for you?
It's come around full circle, but one of the things that I think is about destiny and legacy is that when I was working with kids in the school, I was pulled into schools, and I did an assembly, which is a part of the musical. These are true stories. I was pulled into a school to do like a half an hour assembly, and then I was paid $500 a long time ago. And then when I left, kids would follow me when at the grocery store and the movie store, and they say, come back, come back. I said, I can't come back unless you bring me there, because I get kicked out of everywhere because I'm this crazy lady with a ribbon. Okay. And then people would spit on me and call me stupid and all. And they raised $3,200 in 1991. It's a true story. And to do 3 school assemblies, 6th, 7th, and 8th. LA Times was there. It was a full page in the LA Times and Union Tribune. It was made into television, covered it. So I said, if you're going to get me there, you better get the news behind it. But here's what I said. I got to the microphone. I said, 2 out of every 3 of you has been abused, and I know it. So if it's not you, it's somebody on both sides of you. If you have bullied anybody, hurt anybody, put anybody down, I want you to step to this microphone, state your name, what you did, who you did it to, and apologize. Bring that person up in the front, give a high five, give a hug, clean that sucker up. If you've been harmed at all, get up and tell everybody what it felt like. Kids lined up, by 300 kids lined up. Okay, and I do this periodically, but I mean, you just need the space. And I'll just tell you 2 short stories that will kind of bring all this together, because I'm training kids called in a Standing Strong Together community building leadership training. We're raising $50,000 now to put 125 kids through this program so they be ambassadors, because we're going for 1 billion people to be honored this year with this blue ribbon. And we have a free virtual blue ribbon on our website now that's available to go right on our website. You can send a ribbon out to anybody. You can get your school involved. It's free, and do it. And then, but we're training kids to teach this all over. And so let me see where I was going with this. The stories. I think I was going with the stories. Let me just, is that right? Help me out, bring me back.
Yes, the stories that impact.
Oh, yeah, the assembly, yes. I went away for a second, but here it is. So I'll give you 2 stories. The first boy that came up, because this is in the Los Angeles Times, his name was Todd, and he gets up and he says, I crack up and make jokes in class all the time, and the teacher gets upset because she's trying to teach the course, and then he just starts sobbing, and he just dribbles over and he turns his back to the audience. to all of his peers. There's about 800 kids in the room, the auditorium. I put my hand on his shoulder and I'm looking at everybody. I said, in a moment, Todd's going to turn around and he's going to keep talking. I bring him around and I whisper, keep talking. I'm right here with you. My hand is on his shoulder. He said, but I lost my girlfriend last year. I don't know what to do. About 100 kids jump out. You see, his girlfriend committed suicide the year before, and he had nobody to talk to. And he's acting out, and there he was, the first person that got up on that stage. And yeah, there's going to be 2 more short stories I'm going to tell you, because it's very important for us to know these things. The second person was a girl, and by the way, this is in my book. This is one of the assemblies, but I'm pulling out a story from even a different assembly at a different school, but I want to give it to you. This full-figured girl gets up, and she said, you make fun of me every day for my weight, but you devastate my best friend who's over there. There was like 2,500 high school kids in this assembly. And this girl was buried into the wall. She was just standing in, it was standing room only, and she was just this girl she was pointing at. I come off the stage, I go to her, and I say, I whisper in her ear, turn around. Oh, the girl on the stage, her friend says, I want you to get up and give her a standing ovation. Nobody knows what to do. They're frozen. I come off the stage, I turn around, I said, look at one person in the auditorium. Just make eye contact one. They want to say they're sorry. They just don't know how. And she's crying, and I hold her head up. She looks at one person, and everybody starts applauding. The whole school, there were gang members in that line. The last story I'll tell you, which is actually, all these are in our musical, by the way. These are true stories. The last person who now, she was 12 and a half years old, different school, Amanda Marie Masters. Amanda Marie Masters is now co-owner and president of Awake TV Network, which is in 47 countries. I'm one of the trainers. She was 12 and a half years old at the time. She's now 43, I think. All 3 of her kids are have been graduates, including her, in Standing Strong Together, my training. And I met her because of a podcast like yours, where my friend said, honor people and show them the ribbon. And she saw it. And she said, I don't know what's happening, but I'm feeling like I'm crying. And she said, well, Sparky lives close to you. Why don't you go and visit her? And she comes, and we are just chatting like friends. And I tell her about this assembly. And she said, in 1991, were you at a Degania Junior High School? I said, as a matter of fact, I was. And I said, I'm just working in my archive book. And I opened it up and said, you mean this assembly, which was the LA Times full page? She said, I was in that assembly. I was in line. You see, I had broken my pelvis from a fall, and I was in a wheelchair, and the kids were all laughing at me and bullying me, making fun. I got up and told everybody what happened to me, and you turned and gave me that ribbon and honored me. By the time I walked out of the assembly, kids wrapped around me and apologized, and I was safe in my school after that. The good news is we're all pioneers in this field, yes?
Yes.
It's an idea whose time has come, but at the time it was an emotional intelligence. It was like to do something like that kind of assembly, that when counselors didn't know what to do with kids, when they get up in front of a microphone. But I was chosen to do that through a higher force. And today, the musical will be licensed to middle and to elementary, fourth grade through high school and colleges across America. It's the Bing, the Sound of a Billion Dreams, will impact every school in America. In the next few months, I'll be interviewing 100 youth and adult thought leaders who will be partnering to get everybody on our website to send out a free virtual blue ribbon. We'll be raising money to get kids trained by me. So I'm Grandma Sparky. I'm the voice of this. I am I am the person. Like, I feel in tears right now because we know each other, because we're in global leadership, because we're doing things together. You can't do the sucker alone.
No.
For anybody that thinks you can, you can't. You got to be with people like-minded. They're going for something bigger than even all of us. And collectively, we're helping each other. I've got a team around me because I want to honor and give a shout out to Susie Carter, who is our coach. Yes. And my mentor, who set this up so that I could actually have a system that was donated. She got it donated so that we can launch a social media campaign for 1 billion people. I've got teams around me. Our global leadership teams are volunteering like crazy. They're so skilled in stuff I don't know how to do. And we're starting to write the book, One Woman's Journey to Bring Love to the World. So my story will begin to be written this year. And
Absolutely amazing, Sparky. Thank you so much for sharing. What is the best way for our listeners and our viewers to reach out to you guys and get a hold of your movement?
so the best way is to go onto our website at Blue Ribbons, BLUERIBBONS.org. And you watch the Blue Ribbon movies on our homepage. Click and get ribbons, free ones or physical ones, and say, yeah, we want to donate. You can email me directly at Sparky, SPARKY, at Blue Ribbons, BLUERIBBONS.org, and I will respond to you. Say that you were on listening and where we were listening from, and so I can acknowledge that. And may I take a moment to honor everybody that's watching?
Would love that. Please.
Okay. For all of you that are on this, are watching this podcast with Rima and me, I have a blue ribbon for you, and it says, "Who I am makes a difference." And it would be such a privilege for me to honor you and tell you that I'm inspired by you because you're taking a risk. You're doing something that is your calling. Whether you're at the very beginning and don't have a clue, you're somewhere around and swimming in the quantum soup of all this, or you've mastered and got something you still are learning. Well, there's never an end. I honor you. I respect you for going up against everything unlike it and never giving up. And would you accept this gift from me?
I will, on behalf of everyone.
May I have permission to place it on you?
Yes, please.
It goes above your heart. Where does it go?
Above the heart.
Yes, it goes above the heart. And it's tradition for me to take the spark from my heart and put it in the ribbon. It is the sound that makes dreams come true. And the sound is bing, B-I-N-G. And every time you hear a bing, you'll know the child within us just got our dream and we're doing it together.
Thank you so much, Sparky. Appreciate everything you do, everything you are being, and the major impact you're making on getting a community in the world, not just here. Is there anything that you wanted me to ask that I didn't ask? Is there something that you still want to share that you go, I wish I could just have said that?
I think that you gave me an opportunity to just speak my heart. And I think that's more important than anything because we're authentic together. And it's our authenticity and our grace. And that you set me up and just said, just speak, Sparky. And I got to do that. So there's always a million more stories, yes. But with the time that we have, I want to leave everybody with this. Hang around great people that cheer you on. Ask for help and never give up. Bing.
Thank you so much. So appreciate you. Appreciate the listeners. And remember, attitude of altitude. Everything begins with our attitude towards ourselves and towards others. And if you want life to begin to change and move forward, you need to start impacting yourself with your attitude so that you can go to the next level. Thank you so much. Love you, Sparky.
I love what you had just said. God bless everybody. Go
Thank
for
you.
it.
Bang! Bang! Bye.
It's too much fun.
Thank you for joining us for Attitude of Altitude podcast. You can find us on social media, on Instagram and Facebook under Planet of One. Please come join us. Leave us comments. Let us know if there's something specific that you'd like us to cover. We are here for you to make sure that you become the best versions of yourself. Your attitude determines your altitude in life. Thank you again for joining us.